Welcome back to the Pewter Cast. It is time for us to turn the show over to you guys, our fellow fans. It is time for your questions, your comments, your emails. We've got a handful here tonight, Ren, that we are going to dive into. It's already a long show, so let's waste no more time. Our first email this week comes to us from our new friend Christopher from way out in Menifee, California. That what is that, Empire Island? Area, I think, out there. That's what he says. It's Chris from Menifee again. It happened just like you guys said, only this time the Glazers did not wait. I was watching NFL Red Zone at around 4 p.m. Pacific time, and they dropped the news that Koetter was fired. And so it begins again, the search for another coach. I wanted to answer your question about keeping him, even though he is already gone, just for fun. If the Bucs offense was, say, 14th or 15th ranked, I'd still say keep him anyway. If this year was a down year for defenses all over the league, in my opinion, so a slightly more efficient scoring offense would have helped. But my main reason for wanting to keep him was I didn't want to see this team collapse like previous coaches. He lost games, but he didn't lose the team. You know, Ren, I hear people say this quite a bit about, whether or not a coach has lost the team. And I know that it was painfully evident when Raheem was here that he'd really lost the team. But like overall, we're not in that locker room.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's really hard for us to be able to actually judge if a coach has a team or doesn't have a team.
Yeah, we have to go on the beat reporters vibe they get.
Yeah. So it's I hear that a lot, and I understand where people are coming from. It's nothing I've ever personally liked. But I mean, I don't know, Ren. Play the what if game here with me. I mean, this was kind of the argument you were using for a while there.
Yeah, for sure. But like I've also said on previous pods after I switched, was that was just me kind of like being scared. Like just because the offense is doing well, and me not wanting to change it because I don't want that to change. That doesn't mean the next guy that's going to come in is going to do bad. Now, I always use the example of like, look what happened to the Falcons. Blowing people out of the gym, change the offensive coordinator, same exact, almost total offense. All the way down the line, same people saying, and now, they. What did they go? They went 6-10 and missed the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
But then you could take the Sean McVay and the Gase argument in Chicago. Chicago didn't really change anything on offense. When McVay got to the Rams, they didn't really. They brought in some more receivers, but they had Gurley, they had their quarterback. They had a couple of their receivers, and it flip flopped him. And he's got Mitchell Trubisky. Gase in Chicago's got Mitchell Trubisky, limiting turnovers and running the ball, and they're putting up more points than you think they would for a team that's leading the NFL in points scored against defense.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I get the argument. It was one I hung on to, but I decided that all the other little things that bothered me were just too much to just be like, well, I don't want him to be fired because this might happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because the stuff that I was seeing was not changing, and I would probably argue that it wouldn't change, and I would see those same things next year. And just hanging on to a quote-unquote top 10 offense, it just wasn't enough for me anymore.
I don't know if we're going to encounter this later as we go through the various emails, but something that feels different about this one to me, this coaching change, when we went into Lovey and when we went into Koetter, there was this real distinct feeling of, man, like we're just swapping out head coaches every time you turn around, like new head coach, and you can't build any continuity as long as you keep changing out head coaches. And man, it's only 2-3 years, and oh, here we go again. I don't get that feeling this time. I mean, the numbers are still there. We only kept him for 3 years, and now we're right back to looking for a new head coach. but it doesn't feel like. I mean, one, I feel like this particular firing was certainly well earned.
As the other ones were.
Yes, absolutely.
I think what the difference is, people see that there's talent. There's enough talent on this roster to be a playoff team.
Right.
And and with maybe Raheem and Shiano and even Lovey to an extent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, since they've largely ignored it his 2 years he was head coach. Mm-hmm. You had sort of these excuses. Well, Jesus, just give Lovey another year and draft some defense, see what he can do.
Yeah.
But with Koetter, like Jason Licht filled the holes the best he could, had some misses in free agency, but then he drafted a lot, and there's enough talent on this roster to make a playoff run. Mm-hmm. And it just didn't seem to be getting any better. And you could say, well, it's not Koetter's fault. He doesn't run the defense. It's true, but everyone knows that he picked the guy and he kept the guy too long.
Yeah.
Too slow to change. And that was his downfall. It was just too slow to change defense coordinator. Everything, we talked about it already. What if he would have fired Mike Smith, brought somebody at the beginning of the year? Could have been totally different. 26 in points against the defense isn't good.
Right.
It isn't good.
Right.
So you had your chance, you blew it. With the other guys, it seemed like it was like, well, did they really get a fair shake? Because the roster is not that good, or you had like a first-year quarterback, or you didn't draft any defenders, or Ra's second year they didn't sign anybody in free agency. Mm-hmm. After the 10-win season,
right.
You can make these sort of excuses, but with Koetter, it was all set up.
Yeah,
it was all set up for you to take the next step and get us in the playoffs. And you didn't do it. You came close, then you didn't do it, and they gave you another chance, and you didn't do it again.
Right.
So.
Right.
I think everyone's okay with that.
And I think unless you just have a certain bias against the team and you want to poke stuff against them no matter what they do, one way or the other, I think everybody's okay with that. Chris goes on and finishes up his email. He says, all I can say is that the next coach better be a good one. The record didn't progress, but some players did, and I'm stoked to see next season people like Mike Evans, who broke franchise records for receiving yards this season. Levante David broke Rondé Barber's fumble recovery record. That's news to me. I don't think I actually was aware of that one. If we can keep Quan and David on the field for more than 13 games, the sky's the limit for linebackers. I'm excited to see Vita Vea with a full camp as well, and they better re-sign Adam Humphries. Anyways, Happy New Year to you guys. Now it's just wait and see who the new coach is. I'm going to have high expectations for whomever it is. If they can't go 10-6, might as well fire the next guy too. See you next year. Go Bucks.
I like that. If you don't go 10-6, you're fired. You had your one shot. The roster was there.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Ren. If the next coach does not go 10-6 or make the playoffs or whatever, and I know there's a long time between now and then, but, do you think that what do you think the potential is of seeing a Jason Licht firing, but maybe we keep the coach?
Well, again, it's, we had this conversation beginning of this year. Like, what happens if Koetter, doesn't make the playoffs? Okay, well, how many games does he have to win to stay? Does he have to go? Is 8-8 enough? Is 9-7 enough?
How do we get there? Yeah.
Is 10-6 but miss the playoffs? Is that, yeah. It's how did we get there? Like, what happens? So the next guy doesn't make the playoffs, we'll say. Okay?
Right.
Well, what happened? I mean, I think it's a pretty foregone conclusion that they're not going to bring back Ryan Fitzpatrick. Maybe it's Ryan Griffin. What if Jameis goes down week 2?
Right.
I think the only thing that would get the next head coach fired, no matter what the record is after 1 year, I think the only thing, barring, injuries, is that if the defense regresses, like the defense actually is worse overall at the end of the season than it was when he got there. I think that's what Buck fans are looking for. Like Buck fans could handle a little drop, in yards and passing, and I don't know if they could really handle a little drop in the running game. But if it stayed status quo, I think people would be okay with that. It's not bottom in the league, but if the defense can just get around, jump up another 10 spots in points given up per game, get there in the 16, 15, 14 range, I think everyone will really be happy with that, and you can have something, progress to build off of no matter what the record is. But if the defense, kind of stays status quo, I think that's – and I'm not even saying if it doesn't, he's gone. I'm just saying that might be the unforgivable, the unforgivable thing that happens next year, because let's face it, we need the offensive line to be more consistent. Every time, no, I shouldn't say every time, but it was very rare for Peyton Barber to get to the second level without having to make somebody miss or have to break a tackle.
Right.
Yeah. Now, I understand if they're stacking the box that it's Peyton's job to make the guy in the hole miss, which oddly enough he does. He does that really well. He just can't make the guy miss in the open field, which is just weird, but that's just who he is. But for them to block it up well enough where he gets past the line of scrimmage through the defensive line before he has to sort of make somebody miss or break a tackle was very, very, very rare. And as you watch other games, and it's just something to look at as we watch these, you and I and the Bucs fans watch these playoffs games coming up, about these other offensive lines and these guys with these backs, quote unquote, I'll call them super backs, how often they actually get to the second level, or at least past the defensive line before they have to make a move or make somebody miss. And so I think offensive line needs to improve, and everyone I think will be happy with that, and the defense has to improve. If the defense regresses and the offensive line regresses, there'll be people calling for his job, though it's not going to happen, I don't think. But if the offensive line gets better and the defensive overall gets better, and at the end of the year we miss the playoffs, I think people will feel optimistic.
Sure. All right, next email comes in from our buddy Chris, who I think gets the award for consistent emailer of the year. Pretty sure he sent in 17 emails this year. Maybe a little bit more. I think he double-dipped on a few weeks. But he writes to us, he says, "Pewter guys, Happy New Year. 2019 is finally here, and hopefully it's the year the Bucs will make the right changes and compete for a playoff berth. Firing Koetter was the right decision. Holding on to him for another year would have been a mistake. You can make the case that Jason Licht should have been gone with him, but in the eyes of the Glazers and many of us fans, we feel like there is talent on this team, and the issue is coaching. You don't fire the guy who brought in all the talent because it didn't result in wins. You fire the guy who couldn't develop the talent, and the Bucs did just that." What do you think about that? Certainly a lot of people are talking and asking the question, how does Jason Licht still have a job? I think we both said that there's plenty of talent on this roster. It just wasn't being utilized the right way, or coached the right way, or
given the chance to play.
Yeah.
I think the way, Chris described it at least sums up the way I feel about it. I wouldn't have been kicking and screaming if Jason Licht got fired, because I can understand it, because the overall record is pretty terrible, through his 5 years. But if you look at the roster and see how he's turned it over from when he first got here, and who's on it, and, the promising young players and his hits in the draft, and his handful of hits in free agency, it's hard to argue that it's his fault. Like, it's hard to find somebody that would say that this roster that is worse or is a 5-10 team, 5-11 team.
Right.
Look at the roster and you go, is this a 5-11 team? You're gonna be hard pressed to find somebody you go, yeah, it's a 5-11 team. Oh, are you kidding me? No, that's a 2-14 team. People are gonna think that's a 9-7 team or better. maybe an 8-8.
Mm-hmm. Chris goes on. He says, interesting comments by JPP by saying that there are players who aren't keeping it real. Jason Licht needs to get to the bottom of this. Jameis said this back in 2015, and yet it's still here. I think he's referring to when Jameis had said, I think it was in defense of Lovey, he said, the coaches want to win more than some players here. I think that might be what he's kind of referring to there. He says, I know Ren doesn't believe that winning comes from culture, but it does. And my man, Chris, and we have seen it too often that this organization doesn't have a winning culture. Therefore, we have to have back-to-back 5-win seasons. There's going to be a lot of decisions on what players will be here next year. One player who I think can't be here next year is Donovan Smith. To pay him top O-line money, even for 1 year, in the hopes that he turns around is too risky for this organization, who will have about $45 million to spend this offseason. Things I noticed with Smith that can't be coached out of him, which are his laziness and the effort. I truly believe you either have it or you don't have it, and he just seems like he doesn't have it. It would be in the Bucs' best interest to move on from him. I spoke to many people who are nervous to let him go because they don't feel there's a suitable replacement, but that's not true. Plenty of offensive tackles in the draft and free agency would be better than Smith. Don't use fear as a reason to keep someone on the roster who is average at best. I would like to see that $14 million used to keep Humphreys around or extend Nassib down the road. This O-line needs more Ryan Jensen's and less Donovan Smiths and Caleb Benenox.
Well, let's see. Where do you want to start with that?
I want to start with this idea of paying him top offensive line money. I really wish that Bucs fans, and not just Bucs fans, but NFL fans in general, would stop griping about how much money a person makes. You either put them on the roster and you play them, or you don't have them on the roster and you don't play them. It's not our money. We don't control that money. That money is set aside in the salary cap. It's got to be spent one way or the other, or at least a certain percentage of it does. So stop it. It's either he's on the team or he's not on the team. I understand you want to talk about, well, it uses up this much cap space or this or that, whatever. That's not your job. If we got to have Donovan Smith, Mike Greenberg, Jason Licht, that's their job to figure out and make the numbers work. Stop worrying about that. You want to talk about whether or not he should play or be on the team or not next year, that's fine. But to pay him top O-line money, would you be okay if we were paying him bottom O-line money? He's either good enough to play or he's not. And that's where I think the conversation needs to lie, not it based on how much money he makes.
Brent. Yeah, man. First, let me say I understand what Chris is talking about, but I side with Brent on this, and here's why. Jason Licht and Mike Greenberg, if they want to keep Donovan Smith around, will come up with a number that they're willing to pay, and that willingness to pay Donovan Smith will fit into the salary cap, which they have to do, which they have to pay their rookies, which with their extensions they have to get. He talked about Amber Humphreys, about Quan, bringing in free agents. They've got it all figured out. They've done a really good job. Even Jason Licht even said it in the press conference. He's like, we have a lot of flexibility. Yeah. What does that mean? That means we can get rid of salaries like Deshaun Jackson's, Mitch Unrein's, Bo Allen's, Vinny Curry's if you want to, Gerald McCoy if you want to. They have a lot of flexibility, a lot of different ways to go when they have to come and make these hard decisions. And I believe one of the hardest decisions for the Buccaneers is what they're going to do with Donovan Smith.
Sure.
I'm sure they're going to want to bring back Humphreys. They're either going to get priced out or Humphreys is going to give him a hometown discount. Those are the two scenarios I see is going to happen to Adam Humphreys. They're going to have a price tag on him. I believe some team out there is going to offer him more, and it's going to be up to Adam to decide what to do. So, yeah, that's where I am with that. I'm with you,
Yeah, you know what I think it is, as I sit here and think about it? I think it's the idea that it really eats people up of somebody is making X amount of dollars, is making an ungodly amount of money to do a job that you're just not good at doing, or we would say he's just not good at doing. The idea of saying that a person is lazy, I have a hard time with. Now you might say that he doesn't play to the whistle. You might say that he lets off his blocks before he should. You might say that he blah, 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 blah. I don't know that actually means he's lazy. There's just, I mean, there's lots to criticize Donovan Smith for. Criticizing him for how much money he could make, or using terms that don't really apply, or you can't really judge that on him. I just have problems with. I mean, there's lots to criticize Donovan Smith for, but I think a lot of times what really just irks people is just, it's literally the fact he would be making all of this money, and they don't
not happy with his play.
Yeah, that's not our business. That's completely up to them. So anyway, he says there's plenty of offensive tackles in the draft and in the free agency that would be better. Okay, fine. Here's the other deal. If there are plenty of offensive tackles that are in the draft and the free agency, then guess what? Jason Licht's got their name down somewhere, and they can go try to get them. But, I'll still sit back. It's not using fear as a reason to keep him on the roster. This is not a spot that you want to move unless you actually have a plan in place. You can't say, all right, we're going to get rid of him and hopefully we'll get something. You can't do that. You have to say, we're going to get rid of him and this is what we are doing. And this is what's locked in. So, to bring him back, and, a couple of things, good or not, Donovan Smith does still have 4 years of experience in the NFL, and he has started every single game of his career. He has started, what is it now, 50 some odd games? I don't know what the math is. 64 games, something like that. He's not missed a game. He's been around, and that's hella hard to do. So, it's I'm not defending Donovan Smith. I'm just saying I just hate that as a.
Yeah, if you don't want him on the team, that's fine. If you don't want him on the team because you feel he's making too much money, that's not fine.
Yeah, they'll figure all of that out. So anyway, Chris closed out his email. He says, "I am hopeful that the Bucs will get this hire for the next head coach right. So say we all. Although they didn't get the VP of operations, I don't really care about that at all. They are paying attention to the fans and are getting outside help to get it right this time. Berger McFarland says that's because they don't know what they are doing, quote unquote. And I applaud the move that they made to put their ego aside and are looking for the best interest of the franchise. I can't wait to see who our new head coach will be and the staff he puts around him in the next few weeks. Here's to 2019. Go Bucks, Chris from Virginia. Sent from my iPhone." Yeah. I don't know. Ren, I really want to know what this search firm, what they're actually doing. I know we've speculated on it a little bit, but
yeah, we missed our shot. You know what we should do? We should go on their website and see if somebody wants to come on and talk to us.
I sent off an email about that earlier today, actually.
Nice.
So you and I are on the same page, my friend. Little peeling behind the curtains for the folks out there listening to us live right now.
Yeah, because I mean, not that I'm yelling or criticizing, I guess I should say, the beat reporters, because I didn't really think about this till today. I just, I think a lot about the Buccaneers. Big shocker. I was listening to our interview with Rock Riley.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the firm, and I'm going up to the store and picking up some medicine for Cheryl so it doesn't feel that well. And I'm like, man, those guys missed. And I'm talking about the beat reporters, missed the opportunity to follow up and like, well, why are you using this firm? What do they do? And
what will they do that you don't do? Like,
yeah, is it just like Rock suggested? Is just because of the time crunch? Because I went into Cheryl's work today, and people there now know what I do this. Mm-hmm. I do the Buccaneers podcast. So I walk in, and they're like, "Hey, Doug." They don't know me as Ren. They're like, "Hey, Doug, who's going to be the Buccaneers' next head coach?" And I'm having this 25 minute conversation with these guys. Mm-hmm. And basically I start off, I'm like, I don't know. Like, people right. Like Arians. I know these are the two people that are definitely going to have an interview. And by the time I left the Dallas, linebackers coach and calling the plays for their defense, he was lined up. So kind of lost my train of thought here. What were we talking about?
The search firm. What are they doing?
Yeah.
Media losing an opportunity.
Yeah. So that's what sort of got me started on the ball of thinking about it. And they had like their perfect chance there to ask Jason Licht, like, okay, they're a search firm. It says, they've found these coaches, but I'm going to go back to what I was saying about, like Rock said, is it a time crunch? Oh, sorry. Because when I went into work, Cheryl's work, and the guys were talking to me, I said, once the first domino falls on the coaching search, that's it. It speeds the process up exponentially. Once the first guy goes, okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that was the Bucs' choice, first choice, second choice, third choice, or even cared about. Then the second guy goes, because you know what? The first guy that went, he was somebody's. He's going to be one of these 7 teams' first choice, and he's going to go somewhere else. Well, now they're going to feel the pressure. Oh, whoa, geez, we got to go get our second choice. Right. Well, that second choice, you know what? That might be the Buccaneers' third choice, and now their pool's shrinking. And that guy that goes to the second job also might have been someone else's first choice. So once the first domino goes, it's going to happen like boom, 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 boom. And it may start tomorrow. The first domino could start tomorrow. I
have heard that Mike McCarthy is pretty much a lock for the Browns.
Yeah,
that's all but announced right now. So
so the Browns are basically minding their P's and Q's and making sure they do all the things that are the NFL requires them to do to be fair before they hire somebody. Basically what I'm talking about is the Rooney Rule.
Right.
Now, is that what this firm does? Like, do they check behind the scenes? Or do they give you this abundance of information that you don't have to gather yourself, that they've already gathered, that you can sit there and plop on your desk and go through these people and go through these guys, background checks. Have they ever been arrested before when they were 21? Do they have any tweets from 19 years ago, right. That now are super inappropriate? Right. We don't know what they do, and it would have been really good if they could have followed that up. So,
yeah,
maybe we can do it.
Maybe. All right. Our next email comes.
Oh no! There's some things I want to talk about.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
We never talked about the JPP thing, and I think everyone's sort of ducking this.
Okay, go ahead.
So my question to you, Brent, is who was JPP talking about? Okay, wait, let's start with this. When JPP says, some guys in here don't keep it real, what does that mean to you?
When I hear that, I interpret that as guys who aren't taking football seriously.
Okay.
I really interpret that as they just keep everything kind of copacetic. Maybe not necessarily that they're not taking football seriously, but they're, when we talk about the not holding people accountable, hey, everything's just kind of good and nice, and everything's just maybe a little too lax. I think that comes from maybe not taking football seriously enough. But yeah, that's kind of what I interpret that as meaning.
What it means to me is the person that you show the media isn't the person you are, or that your talk doesn't match your play.
Both of those, yes, but more so to me the second one.
Who is he talking about? Say it. Say it. Say it. Say it. Say it.
I don't think you're gonna. I don't know.
Say it.
Well, I'm not sure what you're wanting me to say. You might be wanting me to say Gerald McCoy.
I knew it.
I don't know if that's who he's actually talking about. He might be. My first thought that comes to my mind, honestly, is not Gerald McCoy. It's Quan Alexander.
Ooh,
that's who comes to my mind.
But Quan Alexander hasn't been in the building in like 8 weeks.
I don't know if he's not been in the building. He's not been playing. Has he been on the sidelines? I don't even know.
I think he's been. I don't know.
Has he been at home on his couch this whole time? I don't know.
I mean, I follow Instagram. He doesn't like throw it out there every day, but he posts a couple times a week, and I've seen him in sort of rehab places, but they don't look like $1 to me.
Yeah, I mean, like I've not seen anything.
I don't see him in the sidelines. I don't see him at games. I don't see him at $1.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything with Kendall Beckwith a whole lot, but from what I understand, he is around the building all the time. Apparently, playing ping pong a whole lot. But that's where my mind actually initially went.
Really?
Yeah. And then also Deshaun Jackson, I feel like, was probably there.
Yeah, that was another good choice.
I feel, yeah.
Mine went straight to Gerald McCoy.
Sure.
Because you know how I feel he's sort of, I don't think disingenuous isn't the word.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I don't know. I don't know. There's something about the guy, man. Like I don't think he's a bad guy. I don't think he's a bad dad. I think he's a great player.
Yeah.
I really struggle of what kind of teammate he is. And I don't mean like as he's mean to people or he's selfish. Mm-hmm. It's almost, God, what am I there's just, maybe it's just a little selfishness.
Yeah.
As in, I don't know. There's just something about the persona I see from Gerald McCoy that just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And I just can't, after all these years, I still cannot put my finger on it.
Mm-hmm.
I still can't put my finger on it. And I feel, and this could be totally my prejudice. As soon as he said that, I'm like, he's talking about Gerald McCoy. That's who he's talking about. And no one's talked about it yet. Like, no one has pulled anyone up yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I bet if Gerald McCoy is on the Bucs next year, I guarantee you everyone's going to come out with a podcast, and I'm talking about the beat guys, with a podcast or an article about how JPP was talking about McCoy.
Yeah. I don't know.
Book it.
All right. We'll see. I can't help you with that, man. I don't know what your thing is with Gerald McCoy. I don't see that same thing that you do. And you and I, we'll be sitting at a game having conversations about it. Particularly before the game starts when he goes through his little pregame ritual and stuff.
Yeah, it drives me the wrong way.
Yeah, it really drives you
crazy. Wait till everyone gets off the field and he has to run to midfield and and act like he's having a private moment in the middle of the flag with his helmet off so the cameras can see his face. He's the only guy that runs out of the tunnel without the helmet on so the camera can see his face. It was like after the Baltimore game, he ran off the bench as fast as he could, make sure he was the first one to congratulate Lamar Jackson. It's just shit like that. I'm just like, God, it just rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
It's not to the point where I'm like, go F yourself. Because he can do whatever he wants. He can.
Yeah.
But I just think it's fake in its antics. And you know what? I just don't feel like he's keeping it real with me as a fan.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's a. Yeah, I think JPP.
It's a difficult conversation.
It is,
and this is why it's never been had.
Yeah,
everyone just talked about. Oh, this is what JPP said, and then they move right along. Well, who the hell is he talking about?
Yeah, JPP didn't say it. That's because I think you started this conversation the right way of saying, okay, well, what did he mean by that?
Right.
Like, what qualifies as that? And that's something that actually, what does that mean to keep it real? To just keep it real. And what JPP might have meant might not be what other people think he means by those words.
Yeah.
What is. Like, I can't sit there and say that I know. I'd have to ask that question. What do you mean when you talk about keeping it real? He did talk about later. He's like, look, whether I like you or I don't like you, I'm going to tell you this. I'm going to tell you to your face, but I can still respect you as a coworker or something like that. Like, and there's people here who ain't keeping it real. Like,
what? So they seem like a nice guy on the outside?
Yeah, and
really,
like
they're only out for themselves.
Or maybe they're not. They want to make everybody on the team feel like they like them when actually they don't, and it's not actually. Maybe that's a culture stunter. So I don't know. I would love to know from JPP what he means by that when he says that, and then yeah, sure, I'd like to know who.
Fire it off an email to JPP.
There you go. I'll do it. I'll ask him next time we're out for a beer. All right. Our next email comes to us from Tyler. Tyler writes in. He says, "Hi." He says, "Hi, Brent and Ren. First time correspondent to the show. I live in Southern California, Menifee. Actually, I heard on one of your previous pods that there was another Buck fan in Menifee. I thought I was the only one. As is tradition with your," actually, we just read that guy's email right before Tyler's here. "As is tradition with your podcast, I will explain how I became a Bucks fan. Around the time I truly became interested in football, the Bucks were different. Everyone I knew was either a Chargers, a Raider, or a Cowboys fan. I loved the style of play that the Bucks had. They had a dominant defense with Sapp and Brooks and Lynch and Rondé. They had the A-Train, who just ran over people, and an African-American head coach with Tony Dungy. They were different, and I loved Dungy's quiet resolve. Being in California, it felt like the Bucks were something I could call my own and not be one of the masses for the local teams. So there's that." Tyler, you and me, buddy, we're in the same boat. That's about the time that I became a Bucks fan as well.
And good for you, Tyler, for sticking with the team.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to jump on the old train when, they're going to the playoffs every year and banging out 10 wins and then end up winning a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. That's easy to be a fan then. Mm-hmm. I mean, I remember when I was a Chicago Bulls fan.
You know what I can't wait for, Ren? I cannot wait for the 2020s and the 2030s when the Patriots are going to suck for 20 years. Can't wait.
Man, I've been following football enough where I remember when the Patriots sucked.
Yeah.
I mean, they were terrible.
Yeah.
For
a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then they had one good year, and the Bears beat the crap out of them in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I remember when the Bears were actually a really good team, too.
That one year?
Yeah. And not this year. All right. He goes on. He says, "Now to the question. It seems like a strong possibility, at least in my opinion, that we could land Bruce Arians as our next head coach. With Todd Bowles available, it would be a logical fit for him to join Arians as defensive coordinator. With that scenario, do you think that we would possibly transition to a 3-4 defense? How do you feel our players would fit into that scheme, and do you feel there are any glaring issues with that transition?"
That is a question for a later date. Because there's a lot that goes into that.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know a lot about Bowles, but I'm assuming, because I've seen sort of this referenced once or twice on social media as well. People are like, Arians, then we're bringing Bowles. And then people would dig a little deeper and like, oh, wait, Bowles runs a 3-4. And I'm not sure if that's true, but I'm assuming it is because I've seen it so many times.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing comes to mind is, well, hey, Noah Spence might have a job.
Right.
Second thing comes to mind is, hey, Gerald McCoy's out of here. You do a JPP, even though the Giants switched to a 3-4 and got rid of him. But you could even stand up JPP and make him an outside linebacker. Like he's that good. But Ray McCoy wouldn't be out of here. See, I don't really know enough about the 3-4. Is it like a nose guard, like a big fat body and 2 defensive tackles, or is it a big fat body and like 2 defensive ends, but with the outside linebackers that are on the line of scrimmage? You got 4 defensive ends going.
Yeah, and then you got your linebackers that come down and it's
it would seem to me that you'd get like 3 fat bodies would sort of be it. And then your outside linebackers that rush or don't rush. The thing about the 3-4 is you got 5 guys in line of scrimmage, and if you just do a base, one of them's going to drop out. Usually it's going to be one of the outside linebackers, but it could be the nose guard. I saw Villa dropping a pass coverage in the Atlanta game. He was funny. It's like a baby learning to walk and watching backpedal. It's like, oh my God. It's like, don't fall down. But
Vita Vea is the guy that I want to see them bring in on offensive line for a play or two, and like bring him in as like a jumbo tight end, and like give him like a little pass out. Let him score once or twice throughout the course of his career.
Oh yeah, he's athletic enough.
Yeah.
Or just plug him in a right guard.
There you go. Rotate him out every third series. I mean, here's the thing, Tyler. Not to nitpick your question here, but you say, could we possibly transition to a 3-4? Yeah, sure, it's a possibility. Do we feel the players would fit into the scheme? I mean, yeah, I think with Kendall Beckwith, I think with Levante David, with Noah Spence, with some of the guys that we have, yeah, I think that'd be just fine. Obviously, Vita Vea would stay right there in the center. But more than that, and are there any glaring issues with the transition? Listen, if Bruce Arians comes in here and Todd Bowles comes in, guess what? Brenson Buckner is most likely going to be our defensive line coach, unless he gets plucked up before this whole thing happens, which I do know Light had said that everybody is free to look for other employment while they're waiting. So, and I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, that Brenson Buckner ran a 3-4. So he'll get the guys. He'll get them ready for the games. I'm not worried about it. I'm not worried about a big transition between the other ones. And, oh, by the way, some of these things of how they describe what a 3-4 defense is, we run some of those coverages sometimes, like already with our current unit. So
yeah, but it's not.
Yeah, but
the personnel's not. I mean, I'm lined up as a 3-4, but it's not.
Right. But my point being is, like, what does it take to transition our current guys from here to there? Yeah, it'll be a transition, but I don't think it's a huge insurmountable leap, And it may mean that we maybe get rid of some guys on a $55 million defensive line that we don't need anymore. So, we'll see. I don't know. It just depends. But, I mean, this is a lot of what ifs for a head coach that we don't have yet, and much less a defensive coordinator. So, all right. Tyler goes on. He says, as you can imagine, being a Bucs fan in California has its disadvantages when it comes to being plugged into the team. Thank you, too, for the great work you do on the podcast. I really like the different show formats and the insight that you two have. Thank you for the passion and energy you bring to every show. I know I appreciate it. Keep up the great work, and I hope you get press credentials you deserve. Tyler in SoCal.
Tyler for president.
I like it. I like it.
Tyler.
I dig
Tyler
it.
for president of California. Governor of California.
King of California.
California.
All right. Our next email comes to us from our good buddy, Chef Aaron. Chef says, a happy new year, everyone.
Has Chef written it every week?
No, he has not. He has not. If I had to guess, just off the top of my head, I'd say he's probably 13 of 16.
All right.
If I had to guess. Maybe
I'm sure
14.
we'll know. I'm sure he'll let us know the next email.
He will let us know for sure. I know there's at least 1 week where he missed. So anyway, he says, Happy New Year to everyone. It has been a long, slow death of a season, but we're finally at the finish line. I just want to say to Dirk, because he listens to the show still, because he said no matter where he is, he's going to be a fan of the Buccaneers. And this is the podcast for the fans of the Buccaneers. Thank you for your contributions to this team and for setting franchise records with your offense. You're an incredible offensive coordinator, but head coach might not be your forte. I'm sure you'll find an offensive coordinator work somewhere, and I'm already hearing connections to the Falcons, which would be so Bucks. You imagine that? If Koetter winds up as the offensive coordinator in Tampa, who's their defensive coordinator, or in Atlanta, who's their defensive coordinator?
Don't know. They fired him too.
Who, Raheem?
Oh, no, No. Raheem was not the defense. Raheem was a wide receivers coach.
No.
He switched sides of the ball. Yeah, he did it.
I thought he was their defensive coordinator.
No.
Oh, am I wrong on that? Okay.
Actually, what they did is they fired their offensive coordinator, their defensive coordinator, and their special teams coach.
Uh-huh.
And Dan Quinn, who was the defensive coordinator at Seattle for the Legion of Boom, is now the head coach of the Falcons, as you know. He's also going to be the defensive coordinator.
Okay.
So the head coach is going to be the DC, and they have and they're hunting for an OC, which looks like Koetter's in the lead for.
You know, something I never liked about the way Koetter ran his deal, like if he's going to be the offensive coordinator by de facto, then he just needs to be the offensive coordinator. And having this other – because Todd Monken has been the offensive coordinator for Dirk's entire run here.
Right.
Like having this, he's the wide receivers coach and the offensive coordinator, but I'm going to call the play. Like, that's all real murky. I've never liked that. That just, like with Dan Quinn, he says, listen, I'm going to be the defensive coordinator and I'm the head coach. You know, it's nice and clean. Keep it like that.
Well, they'll probably still have a DC.
You think so?
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, Andy Reid has been calling plays, the head coach, forever. I mean, he gives them up every once in a while for a few games and then takes them back. But his offensive coordinators, past two offensive coordinators, have gone on to get head coaching jobs without calling plays.
Oh, have they?
And guess what?
Yeah.
One's interviewing with us who doesn't call plays. Eric Bieniemy is offensive coordinator of the Chiefs. He don't call plays. Doug Peterson, Eagles, 2 years ago, went to the Super Bowl first year. He didn't call plays. Right. The guy in Nagy, the guy in Matt Nagy, Chicago, he didn't call plays.
You obviously follow these guys much closer than I do. It just bugs me. All right, moving on. He says, quite possibly Koetter's.
Gerald McCoy's you.
You talk about that whole thing. You talk about that whole thing with Gerald McCoy. It's actually one of the things I liked best about him was his little pregame ritual. I don't say about him. I liked watching him do that, and it wasn't. I never thought that it was a big show, flashy thing. But that was just my own thing. Anyway,
he waited until everyone's off the field.
Hey, I'm not going to argue with you.
Everybody's off the field. I'm the only player on both sides of the ball.
Yep.
Both teams, not even both sides. Both teams. I'm the only player to not in the locker room. Right. I'm gonna go jog out to the middle of the field. Now, like, granted, that one example, it makes me sound petty and stupid, but man, it's just like. You see, like, it's all those little things.
There's a lot of things that piled up for you, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like.
Yeah. Anyway, Chef goes on. He says, quite possibly Koetter's biggest downfall outside of his bestie, Mike Smith, was keeping two coaches from Lovie Smith and George Bardhop and Tim Spencer. Those two positions have been the biggest issue for the last 45 years. There was an article a few weeks back ranking the quality of career offensive line coaches in the NFL, and no surprise, George Bardhop was near dead last. Leadership with Koetter has also been bad as Djax completely walked all over him and could do no wrong with Koetter and had zero accountability. I still remember just last year with that brawl on the sidelines and Koetter with his glasses on was looking right at the ball and did nothing. That's enough Koetter bashing for me now, as again, I wish him well, and I know he's a great family man and a great man in general. As far as Jason Licht goes, I'm 50-50. He's got one final chance to get this right, and it sounds like they're getting outside help, which is something I've been emphatic on Twitter about getting an advisor of sorts. It sounds like this search firm has done good things for many teams, but they also have their blunders with Hugh Jackson with the Browns and possibly Doug Marrone in Jacksonville. Light, because you listen to every episode of the Pewtercast as well, you have 1 year to show that my support in you is justified and this team gets in the playoffs. I know that some will say you have to wait a few years for new coaches, but I'm not buying that anymore with McVay, Nagy, Reich, hell, even Marrone and McDermott last year, albeit they didn't do it much this year. This team has the roster, and it's all about the right coach and has always been about the right coach. The right staff gets the best out of the players, and there are rare exceptions of players making the coach, like Rodgers did with McCarthy or Andrew Luck did with Chuck Pagano. I believe Jameis to be great, but I don't think that he's at that level of greatness yet. To end all there is to say is go Bucks in 2019, hashtag in the drought. Sitting from my iPhone.
All right. As per usual, Chef's emails. Was there a question in there?
No.
Okay.
No, just his thoughts. So
yeah, I don't, as not per usual Chef's email, I don't think I disagreed with anything on there. Or at least strongly enough to remember.
Yeah. The only thing, I mean, okay, let's go back to the search firm thing. He talks about how they've had blunders.
Yeah.
That's not what a search firm does. The search firm does not hire your guy for you. You still have to hire the guy. Like, it's still your call. They just help you sort out the options.
From what I understand, on their website, they're like, hey, this is who we helped out. But they don't list their, it's like, hey, we found Pete Carroll. We found Andy Reid. But they're taking, okay, if you're going to use your logic there about that's not what they do, then they can't take credit for those people getting hired.
Sure, but that's marketing. I mean, yes, you're right.
But they did say, "Hey, Cleveland, here's the guy we suggest for you," and it was Hugh Jackson.
Okay, but no, see, now I'm going to challenge you on that, because did they say we suggest Hugh Jackson, or did they merely say, "Hey, here's Hugh Jackson, who is an option, and this guy and this guy and this guy. Talk to these guys and go from there." Because like there are lots of professions out there.
I was in the meeting, Brent.
Oh,
and they said it's Hugh Jackson, or you guys are a bunch of dumb faces.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, then why are we paying them $250,000? Call me. I'll tell you who to go hire. Dumb faces.
Dumb faces.
But I mean, there are lots of search firms out there in the non-football world that help companies hire executives or something of that nature. A lot of that really is
the legwork.
It is. It's the, hey, there's 450 people out there that are looking for your one job. What are you looking for?
I want to compile a extensive background check and list with all their pros and cons and all like their whole entire resume and what they've done and why they left that job and why they got that job and where they were educated and where they ranked in their class. Or do I call these guys who can give me a 3-inch file on all 450 of these people and give it to me? Right.
And they can sit there and they can say, hey, listen, so here are the things that you want. Well, here are some candidates that match the things that you want. That is really what I think they kind of do. I think people are giving them way too much control and power and credit than they deserve, and they might even be taking more power and credit than they deserve. And I think people are placing too much of an emphasis on this. Oh, it's a search team that's going to be led by Jason Licht with this search committee. No, Jason Licht is leading the search because he works for the team. I think people make it too big of a deal out of it. I really do. But I would like to get them on the show and see exactly what they do. All right, our final email of the night comes to us from Dimash. And here's what he says. He says, fellas, there seems to be some groupthink going on around Rojo. Hey, here's a guy we haven't talked about a whole lot. I sense that he's being written off by fans and the talking heads alike. Where do you guys stand? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being Jeremy McNichols, on his status going forward. I'm obviously disappointed in his performance, but I have to believe that there are some mitigating factors. Tape is tape, and he showed some special traits. Hashtag It's a Buck's Life. Dimash from Northern Virginia.
Well, one of the things I didn't like about Dirk Koetter was he was slow to put the rookies in. Like we saw it with O.J. Howard and Chris Godwin, even though they were getting in beginning of the year, but they were just blocking till like game 8. They did throw O.J. Howard a couple of passes before that, but to really use him, they didn't really utilize him like he needed to be utilized till this year. Godwin really didn't get any passes thrown to him till Deshaun Jackson went out 2 years ago. Kappa getting in there, getting his feet wet, because Beninock was just so bad. That's almost indefensible. And with Rojo, I don't know. Where is he? I don't know. I don't know. You hear stories about how Rojo just kind of thought, once I hit the NFL, I've made it. All the hard work I've done up to my life, now I'm here. And maybe he kind of felt like, I don't want to say it's retirement, but sort of the hard work stopped. Oh, what? I'm in the executive office? I'm going to kick back and drink. He just felt everything was going to be handed to him. I've heard that. Now, I've heard it enough times where I'm starting to think it's true. But I still have no idea. And I still find it very head-scratching that anytime you put Rojo in the game, you would either start in the backfield and then split him out wide, or you would throw to him. But you damn well know that when he came to camp, you said he can't catch the ball. It's why aren't you playing him? Well, he doesn't pick up the blitz well enough and he can't catch the ball. Third preseason game. What did you think about Rojo? Well, I'll tell you what I did like about him. He picked up the blitz really well, what he was supposed to, and then we had the one catch he thrown to him. And then we didn't see him ever. So I don't know. There's like I can't put a grade on Rojo because I mean when we had Plowski on, and I think we were talking about it. It's like, Rojo's gained 42 yards total, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he has 44 yards after contact. That means he's made more yards after contact than his total yards gained. Like,
yeah,
he's just not getting a shot. So I don't know. I hope he works out as he is, as good as I thought he was going to be. Ooh, not his first year, that's for sure.
Right. Right.
And am I a little scared? Yeah, I am. I am a little scared. I am a little scared that that pick was wasted or blown. But
yeah,
I can't be. He's a total mystery box, man.
Yeah, it's hard to see such a premium pick going to waste, but we've certainly seen it before.
Oh yeah.
Where would I stand on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being Jeremy McNichols? I'd say he's probably about a 6 for me right now. I mean, look, here's the deal. He's on the second year of a rookie contract. We've got him for several more years, 3 more years to let him develop really cheaply. Really, really cheaply. So I think it just depends on this new offensive coordinator or new head coach that's coming in. Like, are they going to see value in a second round pick? I mean, they didn't make this pick. Like it's do they see value in keeping him around and letting him develop and trying to develop him or not? I think we'll see him at least through training camp. Will he make the actual 53? Probably.
He will.
Is it possible to drop him back and bring him on a practice squad deal? I don't know that he would clear waivers, to be quite honest with you. They'll bring him back. They'll see how he does. And to me, I think it leans more towards keeping him just because he's so cheap. But I could also see a coach coming in and just saying, no, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to cut our loss with this particular one. I mean, we saw Roberto Aguayo get cut in his second year after not being able to do much. So it just depends on how he performs, I think through camp and what this new head coach wants us to do. So that's where I am on that. All right, Dimash, thank you so much for your email. And actually, everybody else who emailed in tonight, for those of you who emailed in throughout the course of the season, thank you guys so much. You've made this segment of the show. It's been a really good show. I know, with all the content that we put out there, this is the one that this is the show, Ren, I think that has usually had the most hidden gems in it. It's not just right out the beginning. You have to listen through and dig out and get some of the gems. So
you have to listen to every second.
Yes.
From beginning to end.
Yes, because you might miss something. Good.
No, you're right. Because, even though like all our shows are pre-planned, and I like, when we have guests on, I like those because, a lot of those conversations go organically, and we get to hear stories that like maybe or hear or get out questions that maybe we hadn't thought of beforehand. But the emails, which by the way, I don't know if you know, I'm listening to them blind. First time I'm hearing them. It sparks really good conversation, between us if we get to the right subject, and I think today would be if you've listened to this all the way through, I think the JPP. What does, keeping it real conversation mean? And,
sure.
And where we went with that would be the hidden gem in this one. At least my favorite thing to talk about was.
Yeah. You don't like talking about Gerald McCoy?
No, I said it was my favorite thing to talk about.
Oh, because that was where that came out of. Yeah, okay, cool. All right. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Yeah, it's for sure. All right, Ren. Well, that's going to wrap up our final thought show here, man. It's been a long one, but a good one. Part 2 to our show, really closing out the 2018 season. And I mean, really, when you think about talking about the entire season inside of one show, I think people can understand certainly the length. But hey, this is definitely not the longest show we have ever put out by any stretch of the imagination. So, Ren, as we close it out now, why don't you go ahead and tell the folks out there where they can find you on the internet?
Why didn't we just take those 3.5 hour shows, just break them up into 3 shows? Like, why did that never occur to us?
Because that was a time when, for people who don't know, there was a time last year, I think, we were putting out 3-4 hour long shows, and it seemed like the longer the show was, the more listeners we had.
That's true.
It was the craziest thing. Like, if the numbers had started kind of tanking, then yeah, you break it up and you see if that had something. But it was just this weird thing. Yeah. So, but turns out we found out why, and that's issue's been resolved and fixed. So
you can find me on Twitter at Rendax, REN_DAXT. I'm always down to talk some Buccaneers football, but if you have a question that you don't want to put on blast or throw out there on Twitter, maybe it's about Gerald McCoy and what JPP was really talking about, you are more than welcome to slide in my DMs. They're always open, and I will talk Buccaneers football with you there as well, too.
Everybody take a drink. And if you guys want to get in touch with me, you can find me at Brent Allen Live over on Twitter and on Instagram. And if you want to get in touch with the show, you find us at the Pewtercast on Twitter and on Facebook, and shoot us an email to thepewtercast@gmail.com. I'm not exactly sure when we're going to be back next run. We haven't had that discussion, but my guess is it's coming sooner rather than later, as we have our 2018, our third annual Pewtercast Awards show. We'll have our nominations coming out there very, very soon, and we will let you guys know about that. Stay tuned to our Twitter feed to be informed when that will be happening, and then we'll let you guys know what our plan for the offseason is as we go forward. So, guys, listen, the season's been real. It's had its fun parts, and it's had some not really fun parts, but we are turning the page, and we are looking forward to a brand new season, a brand new head coach, a brand new everything. And we promise we're going to keep bringing you the same good content, with the next season as that approaches. And we'll keep rocking and rolling. You guys keep listening. We'll keep being here. So until next time, guys, we'll close this show out like we do all the other ones. Go Bucks.